Are you buried in debt? You know how it is. You wait all month for payday, and the moment it hits, it's already gone. $1,500 disappears on rent, another $500 on the car, $180 to credit cards, $400 to student loans, and that's before groceries, utilities, your other bills, or, actually enjoying life. Your debt is taking huge chunks out of your finances, and most months it feels like your money's gone before you even see it. And you're not alone. The average American has over $21,000 of debt, and that's excluding mortgages. And as someone who spent basically all of my 20s and much of my 30s in debt, I know what it's like. It's something that nags away at you and makes life harder to enjoy. But it doesn't have to be forever. Now, our team here is made up of financial experts with experience in everything money, from banking to Wall Street investing, traditional assets, and even crypto. And today, we're telling you everything you need to know about how to get out of debt. So, by the end of this video, you'll have the playbook on getting yourself out of debt, even if you're on a low income, how to bring your interest costs down, how to spend less, and, crucially, how to avoid debt in the future. Now, your first step to getting out of debt is to choose the right strategy. So, let's start with one of the most popular ways to become debt-free, the debt snowball plan. Now, if you've never heard of it, the idea of letting your debt snowball probably sounds terrible, but that's not what it means. Don't worry though, because we're going to explain everything. So, what exactly is a debt snowball plan? Well, it's actually pretty simple. First, write down all your debts in order of dollar value. Then throw every spare dollar at the smallest debt and pay it off as fast as you possibly can. That frees up the money you were using for that payment, which you can then roll into the next smallest debt. You then pay that one off even faster before moving on to the next one, and so on. So, it's not your debts that snowball, it's the money you use to repay them. Before long, you'll start crossing off the bigger debts, and even the largest ones won't stand a chance against your snowball-throwing fury. Now, the beauty of a debt snowball plan is that it has the highest completion rate, largely because you get a dopamine hit every time you scratch a debt off your list. As your snowball grows and builds momentum, each win feels bigger than the last. And once you are finally debt-free, those snowballs of cash don't need to go anywhere. Your financial stress disappears, and that is the biggest dopamine hit of all, trust me. But while the debt snowball plan is often the easiest method, it isn't actually the most cost-effective. That's because your high-interest debts will keep adding charges, and those can quickly eat into your finances. So, as an alternative to a debt snowball plan, you can consider what they call a debt avalanche. And yes, we're sticking with the snow theme here. And the idea is largely the same. So, just like before, you make a list of all your debts, only this time you order them by interest rate instead of dollar amount. And rather than smallest to largest, you go from the highest interest to the lowest. So for example, if you have a credit card with 23% interest and a car on finance with 6% interest, you prioritize paying off the credit card. Then you make the minimum payments on all your debts except whichever one has the highest interest. Throw every extra dollar at it until it's gone, then roll the freed up cash into the next highest interest debt, and so on. Now, a debt avalanche can be harder to stick with since it usually takes longer to clear that first debt. For example, it could take you 6 months, which can feel a bit depressing. Conversely, it might only take a few weeks to clear your first debt with a snowball plan, which is far more encouraging. So, in other words, an avalanche plan doesn't give you those dopamine hits right away, and that can make it harder to stay motivated. But if you can stay disciplined, this approach is the most mathematically efficient way to pay off your debt. That's because it cuts your interest costs fastest, making each next debt easier to handle. Then, once your avalanche builds momentum, those smaller, lower interest debts get wiped out much more rapidly. Now, obviously, whichever snow-themed method you use will have a big impact on your finances. The debt Snowball gives you quick, easy wins, while the debt Avalanche saves you the most money. The trade-off is human psychology versus financial efficiency. A banker or an accountant would probably tell you to start with an Avalanche plan for the extra savings. Ultimately, though, we recommend that you pick the approach you'll actually stick with, and most people prefer the debt Snowball plan for this. But there is a third option, a hybrid approach that combines both strategies. So basically, you start with the Snowball method and clear your smaller debts first. Then, once you've freed up a decent chunk of monthly cash, you switch to the Avalanche approach and focus on those high-interest debts. This gives you the best of both worlds, and for many people could be the most efficient and the most realistic approach. And by the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, then make sure to like and subscribe to stay updated for more videos like this. And if you're looking for extra help with budgeting, paying off debt, and managing your money better, then sign up for our free weekly newsletter. The link is in the description. Okay, so step 2 to getting out of debt is to reduce your interest costs and make repaying your debt even easier. If most of your debt sits on credit cards, then a secret tool you can use is a balance transfer. But what is it and how does it work? Well, basically, it's when you move all your outstanding debt onto a single credit card with low interest, ideally 0% APR. This helps on a few fronts. First, it makes your debt much easier to manage since you're repaying one card instead of juggling multiple lenders. More importantly, though, it can save a lot of money, but there is a catch. That 0% rate only lasts for so long. If you repay the full balance in the promotional window, say 21 months, then you won't pay any interest. And depending on your situation, those 21 months could buy you some extra breathing room. However, if it takes you longer than 21 months to repay, you'll be hit with an APR that could be even higher than what you were already paying. On top of that, you're usually charged a 3 to 5% fee to transfer each balance to the new card. And you won't always know how much credit you'll be offered until after you apply. So, before you move ahead, you'll need to weigh up how much credit you're likely to get and whether you can repay everything in time, including the transfer fees. Now, if that sounds difficult, then maybe a balance transfer isn't for you. But does that mean you're out of options? Definitely not. You could also consider a consolidation loan, which works in a similar way. Essentially, you take out one large, low-interest loan and use it to pay off your other debts. Like a balance transfer, this simplifies your payments and often lowers your interest while you're at it. There are a few ways to do this, but your best option is usually to take out an unsecured loan, basically a loan based on your credit history that doesn't require collateral. In fact, unsecured loans have become so popular for this that many lenders now advertise consolidation loans directly on their website. We should note that you're not normally guaranteed a lower interest rate with a consolidation loan, however. You could even be offered the same rate and possibly higher, though some people still prefer this because it's just easier to manage. So, do be careful. And if you have a mortgage, another option is to refinance it. This means replacing your existing mortgage with a new one with different terms. Now, usually this lets homeowners change the loan's duration or lock in a lower interest rate to reduce monthly repayments. It can be a strong option, especially if mortgage rates have fallen, and can quickly save you thousands of dollars. Alternatively, you could adjust your mortgage to pay it off faster and ease those financial pressures sooner. In either case, refinancing can be a real game changer, but just be aware you'll usually need to pay fees to close your old mortgage and set up a new one, and these fees can vary, so you'll need to weigh up whether the added costs are worth it. And this leads us to one final way to reduce your debt burden: negotiating with your lenders for a lower interest rate, or better yet, a settlement deal. Now, I get it, this one sounds intimidating. Nobody enjoys these types of conversations. but you'd be surprised how effective they can be. And hey, the worst they can say is no. Now, normally, lenders are more likely to agree to adjust your APR if you've been with them for a while, have a solid record of on-time payments, and have a decent credit score. Now, a good place to start is your oldest loan, since you'll have built more of a relationship there. You basically want to say you're looking to negotiate a rate reduction and explain why, presumably because you're trying to get out of debt. Feel free to point out competitor rates and flex your long-standing on-time payments to sweeten the deal. And don't be discouraged if they say no. You can always call back and try again later, although I'd recommend waiting maybe 3 to 6 months. Assuming you do get a better deal though, that can give you the confidence to approach your other lenders in the same way. Okay, step 3 to getting out of debt is to plan out your expenses. After all, putting plans in place is all well and good, but how do you actually make them work? Well, this is where budgeting strategies come in. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Budgeting sounds like one of the most boring things you can possibly do with your time. But every accountant, banker, and financial professional, including us, will tell you the same thing. Failure to prepare is preparing to fail. That's why you need a solid budgeting strategy, and one of the most effective is a zero-based budget. Essentially, this is where you assign every dollar you earn to a specific role until you have $0 left at the end of the month. So to do this, add up all your after-tax income and list your monthly expenses. That includes fixed bills, variable costs like shopping or fuel, and any other expenses. Then assign every dollar to one of those categories, putting anything left towards your debts. Now, zero-based budgets are great because they force you to, well, budget. And by doing this, you won't be wasting money on things you don't need, giving you more cash for savings and debt repayments. That said, of course, setting it up every month can be time-consuming, so we recommend using a spreadsheet for simplicity's sake. And if you're serious about getting out of debt, it is hard to think of a better strategy than zero-based budgeting. But what if you find there's not much cash left once all your expenses are covered? Well, in that case, it's time to audit your lifestyle and look for places to cut back. So, for example, you could switch to a cheaper energy provider. Check your subscriptions. Do you really need them all? Or can you find cheaper ways to do the weekly food shop? Now, let's be honest, most of us pay for things we don't really need. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're allowed to enjoy nice things. But if you want to make the most of your financial situation, making a few small sacrifices here and there can have an immediate impact on your cash flow. If you really wanted to, you could take this approach to the extreme by asking yourself one simple question. Can I survive without this? If the answer isn't a clear no, cut it out entirely. Treat anything non-essential as a luxury and focus on maximizing those debt repayments. Those luxuries can come later once you're debt-free. And this could save you more money than you might think. Research from 2019 suggests that the average American spends around $18,000 a year on non-essentials. That said, this extreme approach is much easier said than done, and honestly doesn't sound very joyful either. Yes, your financial health matters, but nothing beats your mental and physical health. So, we do recommend taking a less militant approach and making sensible cuts that don't leave you feeling like a shell of your former self. But what if you want a more visual way to see where your money's actually going? Well, why not try the age-old, tried and tested envelope system? This is similar to zero-based budgeting, but it gives you real physical control over your cash. So, just like before, you work out all your expenses, but this time you only leave the money needed for digital payments in your bank account, like any bills that come out automatically. Then draw everything else out as physical cash. After that, break down your remaining expenses into categories like shopping, fuel, eating out, and anything else you normally spend on. Set a realistic budget for each category and put that amount of cash into each envelope. Use only the cash in each envelope, and when it's gone, stop spending in that category. Of course, in today's digital world, keeping physical cash in envelopes might not be ideal. So, instead of withdrawing cash, you can also use digital envelopes instead. Many banks now let you create pots, spaces, or savings buckets, though you can use dedicated budgeting apps too. For some, the digital approach is more convenient, while others still prefer physical envelopes for full visibility. Regardless though, either approach is great because it immediately stops you from overspending. The goal is to end each month with some cash left over, which you can either roll into the next month or use to pay down debt. But look, whatever budgeting strategy you choose, discipline is key. So, set realistic goals and expectations. If you set unrealistic amounts each month, you'll just get discouraged and lose motivation quickly. Alrighty, step 4 to getting out of debt is to take this one step further. But how do you actually do that? Well, the answer is simple. Accelerate your income. Almost nobody thinks about finding ways to earn more, even when they're struggling. But to get out of debt, you need to create new revenue streams. And this means starting a side hustle, and what's great is that there is lots of flexibility here. For example, if you have creative skills, you could freelance in writing, graphic design, social media management, or marketing. Enjoy meeting new people? Well, ride sharing could be an option. Looking for quick profits? Item flipping could work. Got a spare driveway? Rent it out. You get the point. Now, side hustles are a great way to speed up the escape, so to speak. And who knows, if your side hustle really works out, you could end up even richer than you first expected. But maybe you're fully committed to your job or don't want to spend your precious family time doing extra work. Well, you can still accelerate your income with your existing career through upskilling. In other words, building on top of your existing skill set to become more competent. Now, these can be hard skills like learning to code, how to repair something, or improving your customer service abilities. Or you can develop your soft skills like your communication, problem solving, or face-to-face interactions. This will all make you more adaptable and will help you to stay relevant. In today's competitive landscape, you need to stay ahead of the pack, and upskilling is the best way you can do that. So, whether that means taking a course or shadowing someone more experienced, make sure you're not standing still. Because then, when promotions come around, you'll be at the forefront rather than an afterthought. Getting a promotion means an immediate boost to your income, but also looks great on your resume too. But hey, there is a big catch here, and that's time. You won't be able to upskill and get promoted in a day, a week, and maybe not even a month. In fact, it could take several months, if not years, to climb the ladder. This can be disheartening, and it can be brutal if you hate your job. So, ask yourself whether spending money on that extra course or grinding away at a job that makes you miserable is something you really want to do. If not, maybe a side hustle or even a career change could give you the drive that you need. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention one more way you can raise quick cash: selling some of your assets. If you have investments, you've probably already got assets you could consider selling, carefully, of course. But you don't have to be an investor. Chances are you've got something of value lying around the house that you no longer use, be that jewelry, a watch, electronics, an antique, or whatever else. This can give you a lump sum of money to go towards your debt. Just don't sell anything that you might regret selling later. Okay, so by now you should have all the information you need to get out of debt. But we're not done yet. Step 5 to getting out of debt is to make sure you stay out of debt. If you want to avoid falling into similar traps in the future, there are a few risk controls and safety nets you need to put in place. First and foremost is building an emergency fund, even while you're paying off debt. Now that might sound controversial, but it's absolutely essential. Nobody can predict what's around the corner, and the last thing you want is an unexpected bill like your car breaking down or a medical bill that forces you to borrow. So, Set some of your monthly income aside for an emergency fund, ideally using your banking app or an online tool to automate everything. This cash gives you a cushion that prevents you from re-borrowing. Now, fingers crossed, you never need it, in which case you've still built your savings anyway. Okay, the second thing you need is a visual dashboard. It doesn't need to be a flashy spreadsheet full of complex charts or diagrams, though you can absolutely do that if you prefer. But as long as you have something that gives you clarity and shows your debt shrinking over time, this will be extremely motivating. The third thing you'll want to do is establish a no new debt rule, a hard stop that blocks you from borrowing again in the future. That means putting real restrictions in place, like freezing your own credit cards or deleting marketing emails from lenders as soon as they hit your inbox. Removing temptation is so simple that it'll probably be the very first thing you do, but it's also one of the most powerful things you can do. And throughout your journey, your circumstances are bound to change. Maybe you'll get promoted, get married, or move home. Whatever the case though, adjusting your financial plan is crucial to reaching your goal of becoming completely debt-free. But the biggest thing you need to change is your mindset. Instead of thinking, I'm someone drowning in debt, think, I'm someone becoming debt-free. Because without that shift in psychology, none of what we've covered today will really stick. Reshaping your financial situation takes real commitment, determination, and a whole lot of careful planning. But if there's one thing to take away from today's video, folks, it's that your debt doesn't have to control you. You can take control of it. So, with all that said, if a DIY approach isn't working and you're still struggling, then consider a debt management plan. This is a more formal route where you take advice from a credit counselor who helps structure your repayments with creditors. Often, they'll negotiate on your behalf to freeze any remaining interest and combine your payments into a single monthly sum. Just be aware that being on a debt management plan will flag up on your credit profile, which is why it should always be treated as a very last resort. But with everything we've covered today, you should have the tools you need to get back on track on your own. And by watching this video and becoming more educated, you've already taken your first step. It might feel scary at first, and that is okay, because once you get through that first month and start chipping away at your debt, you'll realize that being debt-free isn't just an idea, it's something that you can achieve. Okay folks, that's just about everything from me for today, but if you've gained anything from this video, then do help us out by hitting that like button, and if you want more content like this, subscribe to the channel. Plus, if you think others could benefit from this video, then do them a favor and take a second to share it with them. Okay, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.